Hi, I'm Dempsey Pulai, and this week I'm reviewing Watchmen was produced by Damon Lindelof, who, as we all know, is the genius behind the shows Lost and The Leftovers. Now, he's also dabbled in film, having worked on the first two installments of the Star Trek reboot series, Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, as well as Prometheus. And this show is based on the iconic graphic novel created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. And it stars Regina King, Don Johnson, Tim Blake Nelson, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Lou Gossett Jr., and Jeremy Irons, just to name a few. Now, I was fortunate enough to get a first look at the show. I was actually screened the pilot a couple weeks ago at New York Comic Con, which kind of explains why my upload schedule has been more out of whack than usual lately. Literally, that whole weekend, I barely got any sleep. I've been so backed up, and honestly, the reason why I couldn't get this review up to you sooner was because at the screening, one of the HBO executives was there, and she urged us all to hold on to our thoughts and feelings up until it was closer to the release date. So, here we are. This show is incredible. Well, everything that I've seen so far, anyway. The first episode of the series, and while the season is called It's Summer and We're Running Out of Ice, and it was directed by Nicole Castle. And while Damon Lindelof is famously quoted for saying that the show would be a remixed version of the original source material, I can confirm, because, well, he confirmed it at New York Comic Con, that this show is indeed a sequel to the original graphic novel. Let that sink in. Okay, that means that everything that happens in the graphic novel is canon here, and it absolutely is. In the first episode alone, there are so many callbacks to so many of the things that happened before. And I just want to clarify that this story takes place in the modern day, but still in that alternate timeline that's established in the graphic novel. So it's 2019, but in that universe, if that makes sense. And we see so many cool things. The giant squid is kind of back in some strange way. You'll understand what I mean. There's this really weird sequence that I'm pretty sure is going to be recurring. One of the cooler things, and probably one of my favorite things to see throughout the episode, was the return of Dr. Manhattan. Granted, you didn't really get to see him. It's more of like a really scaled back cameo, but they show him in space experimenting with creation, just as he suggested he would at the end of the graphic novel. But by far the most important thing that is ripped from the original graphic novel, in which I'm pretty sure will have the biggest effect on the story that's being told, is the death of Rorschach. His death seems to have triggered the emergence of a white supremacy group in the South, which is where this season, this series, I'm pretty sure is going to take place. They are, without a doubt, a terrorist organization, and they are responsible for so much bloodshed that's going on, and something big that happens at the very end of the episode. And it's just so interesting to see not only where Damon Lindelof took this series, but, you know, how far, or where he thought that the consequences of the original graphic novel would lead to. And I'm even more excited to see where it's going to end up after this episode. Now, in general, the episode is very well shot. There are a lot of really cool action sequences, especially involving some of the things from the comic book. I don't really want to give too much away, but the best thing about this series so far, or at least the biggest thing that stood out to me the most in the very first episode, was the acting. Academy Award winner Regina King in particular, okay? She knocks it out of the park as Sister Knight. And she's not only a badass, but she's really funny. And that's something that I definitely wasn't expecting from this show. That in addition to being an absolute blast and an absolute adventure, it's very humorous. Now, going back to the cast, Don Johnson, he also has some really funny parts throughout the very first episode. But his role is particularly interesting, and I don't want to give anything away. But I didn't expect his role to go the way that it does. That's all I'll say. Okay, that makes sense. Tim Blake Nelson is also really cool. I was expecting that he would be a type of Rorschach character. To me, he's like the perfect person that I would want cast as Rorschach if they did a Watchmen movie. And it's interesting to see how they use him, because his character is definitely inspired by Rorschach, but what they do with him is, dare I say, much cooler. It's very futuristic. It's just awesome. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen, he plays Regina King's husband. We don't really get to see a lot of him in action, other than this one really cool scene where you think that he's just like a quiet guy that keeps to himself, and then something happens towards the climax of the episode, and we understand that he's in this. He's absolutely in this. I'm very interested to see where his arc goes over the course of the show. But surprisingly, I know I said that there are a lot more people in the series and in the show. In this episode, there are. But those 4 characters are the ones that we kind of get the most of here. And we are introduced to Jeremy Irons' Ozymandias. However, the scenes that were shown with him are just way too ambiguous. Like, personally, I wasn't able to tell if they were flashbacks or if they took place in the modern day. And on top of that, there's like this whole overarching mystery regarding his character. I don't want to spoil it, but overall, I think I'm just really interested to see where this story takes his character following the events of the graphic novel. But there are tons of other characters in the series that we have yet to meet. At Comic-Con, I got to see a couple of clips with some characters that will be shown in later episodes. Jean Smart, for instance, plays Laurie Blake, a much older Laurie Blake, and man, she's just great in everything apparently, because oh man, I can't even begin to say or describe what I saw, and I don't want to, because I want you guys to experience that. But I like where they're taking her character, and I'm really interested to see what she's gonna do, and if Dr. Manhattan will be employed in some sort of way. Also, Hong Chau, Academy Award nominee Hong Chau, she plays another character named Lady True, who seems to me very much like a female version of Ozymandias. Like, she has this noble way about her, and you kind of want to believe that she stands for something good, but you can't help but feel like there's something sinister going on behind the scenes. And I'm just really excited to meet all these characters. Damon Lindelof actually referred to the series as fan fiction, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But when you watch it, you can feel just how grounded it is in the source material. And you get so invested that you can't help but wonder whether or not what's happening right in front of your very eyes would have been the next avenue or the next chapter in these characters' lives. It's really cool. You see, in this first episode, Damon Lindelof has done what he always does. He's created a puzzle. And of course, he's only thrown you a couple of pieces and none of them match, and you have to wait a little while longer before you get the next set of pieces, and of course, those won't match either. And honestly, I like this puzzle. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of work from Damon Lindelof so far, just because I'm such a huge fan of the source material, in case you haven't picked that up by now. But the thing that I think a lot of fans will resonate with is the fact that this is such an intriguing exploration into the world of Watchmen, and it pays homage to it beautifully. There are a bunch of lines that people will be able to pick up from the original graphic novel, and also some really wonderful imagery. And I don't know, I as a nerd, I really appreciated this. And I do think that a lot of people are going to like this show, but I also think that it may take longer for others to get into it, especially if they're not familiar with the world of Watchmen. At the same time, though, I mean, this series is kind of introducing the story and the characters to a brand new generation and a brand new audience, which is totally awesome, in my opinion. Now, there's only one issue that I really had with this episode, and I didn't really talk about it before, so I'll mention it right now, and that was the pacing. This episode peaked way too early, okay? The climax happens at just around the halfway mark, and then it kind of lulls, and then something big happens because you know it has to set up for the rest of the season. So when I saw that, I wasn't too mad at the way in which the events were sequenced. It actually made total sense to me, which is why it didn't really detract from my overall impression of this episode, and the series as a whole. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I am absolutely enthralled. I am very excited to see what happens next, and I hope you guys are too. The countdown is on. And for that, I'm going to give this episode 4.5 stars.
Just the end of the world.
Guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, if you like this video, hit that like button, and also let me know if you think I should do more of these. And by these, I mean episodic reviews for The Watchmen, or any series, really. I've never really done it before. I've attempted to do it. It didn't really work out that well the first time, but it's something that I'm not opposed to trying again anyway. Yeah, let me know what you think, if you like this review especially, but also talk to me about The Watchmen. If you saw this episode, what were your thoughts on it? If you were a fan, if you weren't a fan, talk to me about anything, okay? I like to think I'm an easygoing guy. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post new videos weekly, and I'm always working on new stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to view this video. It really does mean the world to me, and I love making these videos for you. So, I should probably get back to work. Until next time, I'm Dempsey Palad. Take care.